Hello. So, people, Fivos, would you like to mute yourself? Thanks. People are coming in. We are going to wait the typical 3 minutes. Hello, everyone. We're waiting for participants to join us. And in 3 minutes, we're going to kick off. Super. Hello, everyone, again, for those of you joining us now. We're going to wait another 2 minutes until 6:33, and then we will start. So for those of you that are already here, I hope you're familiar with the Zoom environment. In case you're not, just a couple of technical details. There is a chat window. When you write in the chat, and you make sure that all the chat is accessible and readable for all panelists and attendees. So feel free to use the chat to communicate with each other. After a first round of discussion and some short presentations, we're going to open up the floor to your questions. We kindly ask you to pose your questions in the special Q&A space, which you will find at the bottom of your screen with two speak bubbles, Q&A. There you can write up your questions, and at some point, I will start picking some of them up and reading them out loud to our speakers. We are going to wait another couple of seconds until 6:33, and then I will start introducing today's discussion. So it's now 6:33, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar. It's the first of the migration webinar series we've been doing with Transform Europe since last year, since actually the whole coronavirus craziness started for all of us. Today we will discussing with three excellent speakers, and I will now introduce you to myself, Transform Europe, and today's topic. My name is Katerina Anastasiou. I am a facilitator for Transform Europe. I'm based in Vienna, originally from Greece, and my focus topics are migration, militarization, and global strategy. Today, I have asked three wonderful people who you're going to get to know in a couple of minutes to discuss about the nexus, the intersection between the politicization of migration, far-right ideologies, and fake news. Why should we discuss about this topic? As most of you know, fake news and the speed and the strength and the weaponization of fake news have been influencing politics, not only in Europe, but all over the world. We have actually far-right politicians that capitalized in this situation, beginning from Trump, but also in other parts of the world, like in the Philippines or Brazil. We know that since 2016, Europe has more or less continued and enhanced the militarization and securitization of the European Union. And at the same time, this came hand to hand with the securitization of the migration discourse. There were particular narratives framing people coming to seek protection or a better life than they have in the home countries, framing them as invaders, as a threat to the European security. And this hasn't just happened on the level of politics, it also had a lot of help by fake news campaigns and similar misinformation campaigns and spreading around the continent. The first person that I would like you to listen to is a dear colleague from Sinistra XXI. Sinistra XXI is one of the observers organizations of Transform Europe. Again, a reminder for those of you that don't know us, Transform Europe is a network of over 30 organizations around Europe. We are the official political foundation of the European Left Party. And our main office is based in Vienna, but we have colleagues all over the continent as well. So Fulvia, a researcher from Sinistra XXI, has taken upon the task to study a particular striking and important political case of misinformation and fake news campaign in Riace. She will tell you more about the case of Riace in some minutes, but perhaps to start the situation, I would like to remind you that Riace was one of the most positive paradigms of inclusion processes around Europe, and the end of the mayor that made sure to enforce this positive paradigm ended quite abruptly during the Salvini participation in government in Italy. So without delaying any longer, and also because we're about to discuss a lot with each other and get a lot of information, get out your notebooks and pens, and I would like to ask Fulvia Teano to turn on her camera and mic and take over. Thank you, Fulvia.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Katerina, and everybody who's participating. I'm a researcher representing Sinistra XXI, which is an association dedicated to a variety of economic, political, and social issues regarding workers and disadvantaged classes. I've been working on in the last year and also in the next year. I've been working on a project called Global Compact versus Local Impact, the self-valorization of migration labor, Riace as a paradigm, where we introduce the topic, and next year we're gonna develop it even further. So today I'm gonna do a brief introductory presentation on fake news and migration, why they are relevant, what are the counteractive measures adopted at the European level, but also locally and regionally. And I'm going to speak also about the case of Riace. So the first slide, I think Katerina is going to share the screen. Great. So the discursive panorama in Europe proves to be very much characterized by disinformation, propaganda, manipulation. There are many ways to define fake news, false reporting, post-truth. They can be broadly defined as deliberate attempts at and the distortion of news, the use of filtered version to promote ideologies, confuse, so this content and create polarization. So why are fake news produced? Mostly there are, the motivation can be twofold. First of all, financial, by converting fake news going viral into revenues, but also ideological. As we see, they often they are promoted by particular ideas or people or even political parties that aim at discrediting others, creating polarization, going as far as hindering normal political discourse. So We see that many Europeans, about 80% or more, believe that fake news is a problem for democracy and also in their country. Also, Spain is considered the country in Europe where fake news is most frequent. Also, we see that with the recent migration crisis, there are many routes to arrive to Spain, both the Atlantic and the Central Mediterranean one. And also we see that fake news are mostly shared to social media. So for instance, the average Facebook interaction for a fake news in English is 3,199 clicks. So fake news has been a very clicked word on Google. In fact, we see how the trend from 2004 and 2020 has been exponentially growing, in particularly lately, also due to the coronavirus situation. So why are fake news important? They not only hinder the news credibility, but also journalism credibility and legitimacy. So most often in social media, where the source is often perceived at distance or difficult to find. So now we're going to speak about fake news and migration. So the presence of fake news and disinformation related to migration underpins mostly European far-right political vision and political discourse on international migration. Media have often framed migrants, and in particular refugees, as a threat, linking them to concerns on the loss of control from institutions and portraying them as a dangerous invasion, as a foreign and perilous other. So we see that there are three specific axes in the discourses that connect migration to security. First of all, the association of migration with criminality. Second of all, the connection with illegal benefit of the welfare system, public services and social provision. And thirdly, the connection with social instability as a result from cultural and religious convergence. In particular, we see that with refugees or migrants coming from a Muslim country, there are many fake news linking them to terrorist movements or attacks. So the main narratives that we find in media are, first of all, the one of exceptionality, for which there is the necessity to adopt exceptional measure to answer to it, supposedly only temporarily, even though we know that the migration crisis is going on for more than a decade in Europe. And so a situation without control is created, and the need to answer it with exceptional means is adopted. In particular, we see the policy of walls of the European Union, and both on the land and on the sea. Also, the problematization narrative, in which we see a binary construction of migrants either creating or having problems. So discourses on migration seems to always focus on problems, either from the right press, which underlines the problems that immigrants create, and also from the liberal press, which emphasize the problems that immigrants have. Also, the narrative of inclusions versus exclusion or othering. So we see the dichotomy between the Western civilization and the barbarous foreign civilization. So we see that the language of inclusion and exclusion creates categorization, either on gender, on class, or ethnicity. And more often than not, migrants and refugees are object of discourses that problematize them, and on the other hand, legitimizing policies and practices of exclusion. Also, bureaucratization, which is a narrative that basically migrants are understood as numbers rather than people and political actors that have rights. And finally, the victim villains, which is also a gendered narrative, because often women are represented as vulnerable and in need of care, whereas men are represented as dangerous. So all these different narratives leads to a negative attitude toward migrants that may activate stereotypical cognitions of migrant group and even influence vote choices, as I mentioned earlier. So now I'm going to speak about the case which I've been working on in the past year, which is the Riace model. So what is the Riace model? Basically a system of acceptance of migration implemented by the municipality of Riace in Calabria, southern Italy, which went through a very complex and contradictory process. So Riace basically started in the late 90s when precisely in 1998, when about 300 Kurdish refugees landed on the coast of the village of Riace, which was going through an immigration phase. So many people from Riace were leaving it because it was on the periphery. And on this occasion, a man, Mimo Lucano, decided to found an association, Città Futura, which had the aim to promote a series of initiatives directed at combining hospitality, local development, and the recovery of cultural heritage and traditions of the region. So in the first years of the activity, the association invested resources in order to be able to obtain the allocation of numerous houses that were abandoned by the citizens of Riace to give them to the migrants. So to create a widespread network of hospitality, which was later called the Riace Village. Many resources then came from the European Union and Italy, and overall it was a success. Lucano in 2010 ranked third in the world mayor, and in 2016 he obtained the 40th place on the list of most influential leaders in the world, compiled by Fortune. So when did this all changed? When Mimo Lucano was suspended as a mayor of Riace and arrested on the charges of aiding and abetting illegal immigration in 2018, when the Ministry of the Interior was under the responsibility of Matteo Salvini. So following his arrest, the integration project was closed and the city became once again underpopulated. And the judicial charges of Lucano were later found inconsistent and based on conjectural and presumptive elements, but nonetheless, he received also a very ferocious political attack from the then Minister of Interior, Matteo Salvini, which resulted in cutting funds and kept Lucano in exile and basically suspended the project. So we see that in the last years, Riace became very much an important mediatic case in Italy. A large part of national politics and mainstream media promoted a sort of crusade against the political person of Riace and, of course, the project he represented. So he was discredited, and mostly through the fabrication of fake news. For instance, the accusation of arrangements of false marriages between Italians and migrants. Also, fake news on his municipal electoral campaign and the results and his judicial process. So basically, he was both discredited from a legal point of view, but also at a national point of view. We see that Riace in itself, what Lucano created, represented another idea of Europe, not perched on the policy of wall I mentioned before of the European Union, and on the imperative of the national community. He fought for the respect of the specificities of the territory and the human rights of refugees. And in fact, he obtained prestigious awards and worldwide fame, but still the project was shut down and ended very, very badly. So I'm gonna now speak about the countering disinformation strategies. So there are different initiatives that were developed in the last years because fake news are very much part of today's media. So for instance, there have been different programs, as Katerina mentioned earlier, and since 2015, the European Union has developed an high-level expert group, also disseminated a code of principle and a service strategic communication task force. There have been many critics on this approach. Some of these initiatives have been focused on Russia and the Russia disinformation campaign. Also, many have said that they do not fully are not fully in proportion with the scale of the challenge, both in terms of the volume of disinformation being produced and the increasingly sophisticated technology being used to design and perpetrate disinformation campaign. Also, alternative solutions are legal ones. So we see they go from banning outlets to prohibit anonymous sources, even though these are often criticized as they would restrict freedom of speech and information. Some other initiatives are self-regulation measures by media giants, for instance, Facebook, Google, which consist in filtering this information and cutting financial resources of outlets. Also, we see fact-checking portals, which we're going to speak later on also with the other participants. Fact-checking can be defined as a journalistic practice based on a posteriori confirmation of information published by media and on the verification of the statement made. Also, there are many strategies on countering misinformation. For instance, the formations of agents and initiatives that involve the broader population locally. Overall, the most important tool in countering disinformation is always media literacy and education through many different initiatives, also fact-checking portals and organizations do this. And for instance, also this webinar can be considered part of it, I hope. So now I'm gonna introduce one of the speakers. So today had joined us a representative of Tenerife Antirrumores, which is an anti-rumors, anti-fake news strategy, part of a bigger one located in Tenerife called Juntos en la misma dirección, which is about managing cultural diversity and coexistence. So now I would like to give the word to Laura. Hi. So the first question I would like to ask you is, well, first of all, presenting a bit yourself and the organization, and why do you think that combating fake news is relevant today, and what is the connection of your organization to fake news, and in what ways are you battling them and the consequences of this?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here as a representative of the Tenerife Antirrumores strategy. I started in this. I'm a journalist. I have to say that is also important, also for the work I'm doing for the strategy as a member. I started in 2016 as a result of the training of anti-rumor agents. It was in 2016, and well, the Tenerife Antirrumor strategy is one of the 9 thematic groups of juntos. Now we call it, we changed from juntos to juntas, so it's juntas en la misma dirección strategy. We started in 2013 working on awareness raising, training, and the development of actions designed to combat prejudices, stereotypes, rumors, and fake news that affect people of other origins and cultures. The anti-rumor strategy was conceived in Barcelona, the general strategy, within the framework of the Spanish network of intercultural cities. That is linked to the Council of Europe. There's also the intercultural cities in Europe. I don't know even outside Europe, but I know that there's intercultural cities network in Europe. So we are part of the Spanish network. This strategy focuses on the construction of new narratives linked to migrants, ethnic minorities, and cultural diversity in general, achieving a direct impact in the prevention of racism, xenophobia, and discrimination, and highlighting the value and richness of cultural diverse societies. So since the beginning, Tenerife Antirrumor strategy, since 2013, has developed activities framed in three different lines of action. Trainings, like I already said, the training of anti-rumor agents. We have trained 99 people. We hope for 100 people in the future, at least. It's a joke, but we are doing more trainings in 2021 for sure. And also we do awareness raising workshops. Another line of action is awareness raising campaigns. We have done, I think, 7 campaigns up to date. The last one was related to sharing tools to verify information. And the third line of action is the design, elaboration, and dissemination of materials that help to fulfill the group goals, like videos. And also we created a rumor roulette. It was like a game to face fake news. So the questions that you ask, well, for us, combating fake news and rumors is one of the main reasons to exist. If not, we like the reasons to be for the group as a strategy. And as we said in one of our campaigns, virtual violence affects real people. Virtual violence affects real people, and the same happens with fake news. With the rise of social media, all this disinformation, of hoaxes travel very fast, and we assume that combating these rumors is our responsibility. Also, we know that disinformation affects people and damage the living together, and that's one of the goals of the strategy. And so the hoaxes and the fake news affect the living together and the coexistence of people in society. So facing and combating the fake news is one of our goals, to prevent racism, xenophobia, and discrimination, but mainly to build new narratives that exposes the value of cultural diverse societies, and in the respect of our rights, that's very important. Our rights is the rights of everyone, of all the people. We are located in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands, and we are part of a bigger strategy that is Juntas en la misma dirección. juntas en la misma dirección, is together in the same direction, the meaning of this name. It's a strategy focused on working on the coexistence of the cultural diverse society, which uses social participation as a tool through the creation of spaces for joint construction between people of different cultures, religions, origins, and let's say different ways of thinking. So that's more or less what we do. And sadly, nowadays, with the rise of far-right movements, far-right parties, and also I think that as a result of this isolation that we are, and all the fear that we are facing with the crisis that we are involved now with the COVID-19, all these fake news are developing, and they share and spread very fast. So we thought that it was a time when we need to do more things about it. One of the things that we did was I said before, yes, as I said before, we developed a campaign called Juntas Verificamos, or Juntos Verificamos, Together We Verify, to share verification tools and advices to face fake news, rumors, and hoaxes. And we did this campaign in 2020, last year. However, this campaign was online because we couldn't do it something in the street. We normally do campaigns in the street. However, we considered that this campaign was not enough. We were really worried because of the situation here in the Canary Islands with the pandemic crisis. Together, we see the increase of migration coming to Tenerife. Well, not only to Tenerife, to the Canary Islands from the African coast. And with this increase of migration, more and more fake news and hoaxes appeared, and also caused an increase of xenophobic and racist narrative and actions, which led us to think about how Tenerife Antirrumores could do something about it to face it and to help society to face it. So apart from the campaign that I already mentioned to share verification tools, we also proposed two specific actions that were the anti-rumor keys to support journalistic work, which are guidelines for communication information about people from different cultures, origins, backgrounds, and so on, who have recently experienced this rejection and hatred, both on the internet and in the street. And we also want, with this document, to establish alliances and strengthening the informative work in Tenerife, also with the support of the Observatory of Migration of Tenerife, OBITEN. Apart from this guideline, we also created a database with the argumentation and the information necessary to counteract fake news, hoaxes, and rumors that circulate about people of diverse origins, focusing mainly on the island of Tenerife. But as you know, often we have common rumors and common fake news to the whole Canary Islands and the whole country. So we dealt with everything in this case. So that's what we are doing now. I hope I haven't talked too much.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you for your first presentation. We're gonna get back in 5 minutes, I guess, or so. I would like to introduce to you all also Fivos. He may also turn on his camera now. Fivos is, hi Fivos. is here with us representing the Disinfaux collective with a very word, the meaning of the word, in Greece, trying to also understand the mixed intersections between far right fake news and the impact it actually has on migration policies. Perhaps also this is an opportunity to tell you congratulations for your series on the case study of Lesbos, which is unfortunately for the rest of you only available in Greek, but perhaps we can get people motivated today to translate it and share it with the rest of the world as well. And Fivos, I would like to pass the floor to you to introduce the collective and your work, and also tell us about how you see it. You see migration, fake news, and all this complex intertwining in what you do.
Thank you, Katerina, and thanks for the invitation in this webinar. And I would like also to thank, on behalf of the rest of the collective, everyone that is attending right now. So the Disinfaux Collective started actually within the pandemic. It was quite interesting, while we are not able to do field research, we were able to collaborate remotely and to assemble this group of researchers and freelance journalists and content creators and 3D designers. So we are quite a diverse group. What we actually do is we try to investigate narratives of far-right and alt-right rhetoric. We are trying to investigate and debunk fake news from time to time, but our main focus is the far-right and the human rights violations in the borders and outside borders of Greece, also focusing on the Balkan route. What is interesting for us when it comes to fake news and the way we, let's say, got into fake news is not because we shared the specific interest in debunking them or investigating how they form. More we were led to it because of trying to investigate far-right actions and hate speech that transformed from narratives that were spread online to action on the street, like individuals that were discussing certain things that ended up on the street performing actions of violence that were racially motivated and were stirred up further hate speech. Some good news for you is that the investigation we did for Lesbos is going to be published in English very soon, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. But let me talk a bit about how the example of Lesbos actually instigated the dialogue within the team and led us to look into fake news and how they get created. Apart from the specificities of fake news as fake news in general, the Lesbos example is a place that everyone knows. Everyone knows there is Moria camp in Lesbos. Everyone knows that the Moria camp was burned and that people were further displaced after their arrival in Greece. And everyone also has seen the events of February and March 2020, where a decision by the government of Greece to send police, riot police in the island to suppress the local population that was rioting against the existence of the center in the island, of the detention center. So once the riot police was retrieved from the island, then what basically happened is that this anger and this violence that was being instigated had to be directed against someone. And fake news played a very important role, and all these narratives that also Fulvia mentioned before, and Daura, like the anti-migration narratives that are reinforced. They are not created by fake news, at least in the case of Greece. They are being reinforced by them, and thus the certain amounts of the local population and certain groups that have been active in the recent years have directed their anger and their actions against migrants. In terms of what the Disinfaux Collective does, another very significant case that we worked on in Greece was the case on investigating whether the Greek state, published fake news on the day of the conviction of Golden Dawn as a criminal organization on the 7th of October, which shows how we approach the complex of media and the complex of information sharing in Greece in general. I think that the most important part in this was that there was a demonstration, there was a gathering outside the courts system of Athens, the court complex of Athens, thousands of people, and the Greek media, together with the representatives of the Greek government, managed to actually misinform the public on most notes, like checking most of the boxes. And this was also used later on within the COVID-19 rhetoric as to how the anti-fascist crowd that gathered outside could further spread the virus. So, in our case, using 3D design, we approached the space and we debunked certain aspects of how many people were there, and then by synchronizing video on a methodology that was widely used by Bellingcat and forensic architecture, we also proved that the excuse that the state used to attack the demonstration was false. And then we also had, and I think that also plays into the narratives and the fake news creation, we also had a response from the state publicly, not directed only against us, but against everyone, that said that the crowd did not attack the police, but it was the police that attacked the crowd, where the state, the Greek police authorities, published drone footage that also showed that there were no attacks against the police prior to the attacking against the demonstration. So we are in this interesting, I would dare to call it battleground when it comes to information, where we on the one hand have to fight against the narratives that are being created and disseminated by the far right, but at the same time we are living in a specific country, in a specific place, and in a specific, let's say, temporal scope that makes it even harder, and that is actually actively supporting the creation of fake news. I think that is enough as a small introduction from our side, and we can get more into the practical details of what we do and how we see our work later on into the discussion.
Thank you very much. Fivos, may I ask Fulvia and Daura also to turn on their cameras now, as we will enter our discussion and try to be more interactive with each other. Fulvia and I, when we were discussing and designing the event today, more or less want to have a discussion among us, mostly among you three. And I would like to ask you to do something like this while we're talking, so I know you want to take the floor. Okay? A first question that I would like actually to address to all of you, we saw that, I mean, you do have we heard three different approaches, right? But nonetheless, all of you are in the Mediterranean space. To contribute to the discussion now, I can tell you how this works over here in Austria or even in Germany as well. The strategies behind fake news are more or less similar. We have the same models of criminal, like attributing criminal identities to migrants, othering them, calling them invaders, danger for the women, and so on. But these are narrative already that here had reached into the mainstream political landscape. Like there are literally things you see on political and electoral posters as well. Like the most famous one I can think of was a poster of the AfD in the last German elections, where they had the picture of a pregnant woman, and on it was like, new Germans we make ourselves. Right. So, or I can remember there was an anti-migration campaign with, women being raped by Black or brown people and so on. So my question is to you, in how far do you see these, let's say, narratives or framings being repeated in Europe? And do you think, for example, that after people reach Italy or reach Tenerife or reach Lesbos, this is also, I think, something that belongs to the discussions. How much does it actually affect their everyday lives? At least for the case of Lesbos, we heard now from Fivos that it escalates up to physical violence. And how do you counteract this? Any of you wants to take the floor? First one? No? Who is the bravest? I will say yes, Fivos, come on.
So, as a very good example that can shed some light into what you just described, there's a very recent example, like literally 2 days ago, where students from the new Moria camp, or Mavrovuni as it's the new name, were supposed to participate in the local school, and suddenly through a series of posts on social media and through a series of news articles, there was this rumor that these are not children. And I will not really, just as a clarification from my side, I will not really go into the details as to would it be wrong whether they were like indeed 25 years old and wanted education. No, I'm just going to go through the facts, which is that parents allegedly gathered outside the school. And I say allegedly because one of the people that actually spoke against the inclusion of children from the asylum seeking community in the school is not even a parent, and that is something that we are aware of. And they gathered and said that this is something that they should not allow. Children should not be allowed to get into the Greek school because they pose a threat to the Greek students. And obviously this raises concerns, because the main reason that the parents, or at least the reason they vocalized that they were against the inclusion of children in the school, was because these were not children. And they were basing this assumption not into hard evidence or data, or let's say any official communique from the government, but they were basing that into the pool of rhetoric that is being created in Lesbos, that seems that everything that is foreign, that everything that is the other, is actually dangerous, poses a threat, even speaking about like COVID-19 and the potential for infection of the rest of the population. So I think that from our side, that would be a good example that speaks to that.
Thank you very much, Daura. Would you like to go ahead?
I can give you, I don't know how many examples. You don't know if nowadays in the Canary Islands we are part of the Atlantic flow of migration. Like, so after all the control that the Mediterranean is now facing, it's terrible there. So the escape was crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And not only people are dying in the sea, but also when they come here, first they are living in campsites in the street. I mean, it could be in the land, and now it's winter. It's been raining, so it's like in Lesbos, let's say. They're not. They're not living in respectful conditions, let's say. But not only that, they have to move people from there to the empty hotels that now we are, with the pandemic situation, we don't have tourism. So there are many hotels that are empty. So the Spanish government signed a petition, or signed a contract, let's say, with the hotels for people to get there temporarily, let's say. And the local governments, or some local governments in the island of Gran Canaria, how can I say that? They were moving behind and talking with the hotels from one side, talking to the people of the towns there, and moving people to doing demonstrations in the street against the welcoming of migrants there in the municipalities. And little by little, the situation has been worse and worse. More people came to the port in one port in Gran Canaria. There were like 1,600 people there, when they were supposed to be up to 72 hours, 3 days there. Some people stayed there for weeks in those conditions, with the pandemic, everything at the same time. I can explain, but apart from that, so there were demonstrations against the migrants, and then people moved to other locations. Some people also have quit the hotels and these camps and these places where people are now living, because they don't like it. It's normal in the condition that way they are living, that they don't like it, and then facing the reaction of the people on the street. People are gathering together and going after them, and they are filming videos saying they are going to kill migrants. So this is the situation nowadays. And later, because most of the migrants are located in Gran Canaria, it's another island, some I think it was 2,000 people this week are coming to Tenerife. So on Monday, there was, it was not on Monday, it was on Friday, last Friday. We had like a storm here. It was really rainy, and we have 5 degrees without heating. And they were moving from Gran Canaria to Tenerife to one of these camps, and with everything, with the water and everything outside the camps. And they didn't want to leave the bus, the transportation that take them there. People in social media were saying that they are not grateful for the living condition that we are giving them, like we are making them a favor, and these kind of things. It's terrible. I don't know, it's terrible. So we are now facing a situation really problematic, because not because of the migration, it's the conditions of the camps and of the places where they are living. Also the political response to this, how they are facing the situation, how they are acting or not acting at all. Not only Spain, I mean Europe in general, because they are using the Canary Islands as Lesbos in the past, and Lampedusa and other islands, like they were prisons in the barriers of Europe. So yes, that's it.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. So now I would like to ask you if you have any experience with fake news campaigns specifically, and if do you campaign against them, and also if you find out if there were real accounts behind them or not. Whoever wants to go first.
I mean, I could share some insights, and we have a set of paradoxes. I mean, the benefit system that we already mentioned is one of the most amazing paradoxes that we face, and I will have to use this story that I think many of you have heard around, which is how people that have succeeded in applying for asylum, or even asylum seekers, are actually getting huge amounts of money just because they're asylum seekers, which leads sometimes to there is a sense of absurdity even on some of these claims. And I'm going to use this as an example. So I think that when it comes to fake news in Greece, at least, the biggest campaign is everyday life, if that makes sense. How do we correspond? How do we communicate with people on an everyday basis is really important. And I think that I cannot stress enough how important it is to engage sometimes and point out the absurdity of certain claims. When you meet like a taxi driver and he says, oh, these people that come from Africa, they get 2,000 euros for free, and they also get to work. And I'm like, would you work if you had 2,000 euros given to you every month without a reason? I wouldn't. So the absurdity that we see sometimes in these claims is an interesting thing. And I think that this is like part of the everyday campaign. On the other hand, when it comes to social media right now, at least in Greece, we live in a very dangerous time. And this is not about censorship, though censorship is actually a debate. And I think we are going to talk about it later on. But it takes literally 2 or 3 seconds for you or for me to make an absurd claim on Twitter, and it might take a researcher, as you're more than aware, it might take a researcher like a month to find the data to say that no, this is not true. Because if I go online and say that, you know, XYZ person gets 2,000 euros just because they are, I need, as a researcher, to debunk this. I will need to go into a public database. I would need to go into other sources and say that no, they are not. They get X amount, which is not 2,000, or they don't get any amount at all. And I think that this is right now what we see in Greece, at least on the social media landscape. We see many accounts on multiple social media, either complete like trolls and bots that do not really care to be consistent and cohesive with what they say, or some people that will promote a specific narrative up until you actually fight this narrative. And when you do, they will just divert, and they will use like horseshoe theory, whataboutism. They will try to stray away from the conversation. They will try to attribute you to a specific group or to a specific political party or to a specific, you know, minority or a specific language or race, just to not interact with your arguments. So what we see in Greece is a huge amount um, of bots, for example, on social media, or for users that support fake news consistently, attacking specific investigations, attacking specific news, without really providing any counter evidence. And we've seen that since March and February, and it's getting now to an alarming rate.
It's not really different from the things in how things are going on in Spain. It's really the same. The far right movement, the far right parties are investing a lot of money. When we say a lot, can be, I don't know how many euros there, because they have bots. There are people that are acting like bots, and it's not like one people, it's like hundreds of people working, and this has been researched. People have talked to the press and then expressed what they have done for this movement, for these parties. And not only that, when you do your work and you do your research, they try to create another line of to face it, and another lie to is incredible. So mostly what we do is, as the colleague said, it was like everyday action. When you, for instance, in my case, I do a lot of these kind of things on WhatsApp groups. When they share these fake news, these videos, and disinformation. So everyone can do something about it, but it's true that we need more strength. Because one people or one small group as or one strategy alone cannot counteract something that is really big, and there are a lot of money to do it. So they don't mind if you can do your work for a small group of people, but they are trying to reach society through social media. So sadly, we have to do more. We can start with our friends, with our families, but still we have to do more.
Thank you very much, Daura and Fivos. Perhaps to pick it up from there, I mean, what you also said, Daura, it is pretty obvious that there is a lot of money behind such campaigns, and you can see it by the extent of the troll armies. You can see it by by the speed in which narratives change to accommodate the latest fast checking. And of course, I can imagine being active in this field. It must be very frustrating, also feeling a little bit like Sisyphus, but still. This is not stopping, no? And one of the, at least here, and I guess it's the same there, one of the typical things you get to hear if you're sympathetic towards refugees and you're working for them to have their rights, I don't know, whether it's monitoring now fake news or actively monitoring the border, for example, is that you're paid by Soros, and if you work in an NGO, you get, I don't know, 3,000 euro salary a month and so on. So I guess this kind of accusation is present. I can see it by your smile, Laura. I guess in Greece it's also the same, and pretty much in Italy it's the same. So the question is now, how do we get out of this vicious cycle? On the one hand, we know fake news are weaponized in order to push for more aggressive anti-migration policies. And on the other hand, we are accused of being the ones getting the money on our bank accounts, no? And at the same time, here in Austria in particular, the anti-migration narrative and the COVID anti-vaccination narrative are now coming together, also in many social media accounts of that relevance, but also in a physical form. For example, here in my flat, we had on the same day the flyer of the identitarian and the anti-vaccination flyer in the same set, no? And you actually do have a lot of demonstrations in the German-speaking space against the corona dictatorship. And what you see actually there is like a physical presence of what you see in social media with fake news. You have a lot of crazy narratives at the same time. So the question to all of you is, how is it going on there? Do you see this kind of new mixture between anti-vax, anti-science, anti-migration mixing up? And how do you respond to you're getting paid by Soros narrative in what you do? How do you defend yourselves on that? Maybe Fulvia, you would like also to add to this point, no?
Yes, okay, sorry. So yeah, in Italy, also, I think in 2015, there was a big campaign on the 20 euros a day that migrants were getting, and also the free hotels, etc. And yeah, I think the best strategy overall, of course, would be like also reaching, I think, the certain kind of audience, because there are already people that kind of are already aware of what is going on with fake news and also the initiatives to counteract them. Whereas there are other people who are not aware at all. So I think one proposal for the future would be to reach a broader audience as possible. And also regarding vaccination fake news, I think they're gonna come right now, like if not already there, they are, but they're gonna definitely increase fake news on this topic, and who gets the vaccination first, and all of that. And also locally, the vaccination is getting managed in different ways in different states, so the specificities are different, but overall the thematic will be the same. And I think there may be also like direct action at this could be like having like a section of, let's say, fact-checking organization, or even from the EU to work directly on this topic rather than, and as well, get in the way to spread these countering campaigns as far as possible, reaching people who, because I think there are like kind of people who already are aware of anti-fake news narratives and organization, people who are openly against and work on fake news campaigns, and people in the middle who often are left to their social media and what they encounter. So I think that kind of audience in the middle would be the first to reach and to sensibilize about these topics.
Vivo, and then Daura.
So I wanted to start with two, I think from my side, interesting remarks on this. So when we speak of fake news and we speak of social media, I think that this is not a method, this is the result of a method. So what we encounter as a fake news spreading in social media is like the last line on a certain, last point on a certain line of rhetoric that then stirs up new discussions. And the reason I'm saying that is because for me the problem is not how you control fake news only, like this is the reactionary, this is the reactive part, but what do you do on the proactive? What do you do and how do you establish a culture of verification of information? And verification of information does not need to be connected to a specific political spectrum, to a specific political ideology, to religion, or to a race, or to a certain educational level. Though I have to say here that this is something in regards of self-criticism and how, for example, scholars and journalists have been treating information in the last years. Sometimes we see that instead of bridging the gap and make things more cohesive and comprehensive to the public, sometimes we actually do the opposite. Now, so this is one remark. The second thing that I wanted to say regards social media, which is less of an answer, but more of a contemplation as to how social media work, is that banning and censoring, while on the one hand helps minimize sometimes certain narratives, on the other hand, it leads to this paradox of people being further deplatformed and then seeking other avenues and then further getting enclosed into this sphere of misinformation. So, for example, if I have, let's say, 20 people on my Facebook that I interact with daily, and then I get banned, and some of these people were from my school, were from my work, and I get banned because I spread fake news, then when I come back, I will not really get back to these people that might give me options to see posts and news and shares from their everyday life and maybe different opinions. I will add again, first and foremost, the people that share my ideology. And if my ideology is on the right, and if my ideology is on the hate side of things, then I will keep on interacting with these people, not with the people that provide me an alternative. So this is to say that the way that fake news are created and disseminated in social media and the way they get spread to the public is a very is a very diverse, let's say, concept. There's not a linear somebody says something, it gets picked up. It seems like it does, but all these all the fake news narratives or conspiracy theories have an epistemology and have a historicity behind them. So anti-vaxxing is not a new thing with coronavirus. It just gets a new form, one would say, and that's a pun intended. It mutates to fit the COVID-19 narrative. It's not a new thing in Greece. And same would go for chemtrails. And I will give you just a small example to end on this. Yesterday, there was a fire in Athens. The state did not inform the public about this fire. The Greek authorities, the civil protection, did not send, let's say, an urgent SMS to explain why almost half of the mainland is, at least even for a second, without electricity. Less than an hour after, people started spreading fake news that would go from chemtrails, to QAnon, to reptilians, and to the Hollow Earth conspiracy theory within less than a night's time. And again, this is where someone, if there was a culture of verification and a culture of transparency from the side of the authorities themselves, if they would come and say, look, there was a problem, you know what, we didn't really do our job in doing service and maintenance on that specific subunit of the electricity company, and then, yes, it blew up. We take responsibility. Then this would also silence many of these fake news and many of these rhetorics that get revolved around it.
Dara, thank you, Fivo.
Yes, we have seen in Spain as well as in Germany that I don't know how do you call it in English, that we call it here médicos por la verdad, that is like physicians for the truth. Yes, I think something like that. So this is now established network, but as Fivo already said, is something that started in the past, and now we are connected through social media and these kind of things. So it's getting more difficult to face it, but also what we do now is we train. We do some workshops at schools, at high schools. Now everything has to be online, or mainly online. Sometimes it's physically impossible, but we still do that, because if people know the techniques or the tools that are really easy to find, to identify something that is false, fake news or an hoax, something, as these tools are really at hand, everyone can do it, can use it. So we work with young people, but also we have worked with different kind of organizations, and little by little we do more, and we do these kind of things on webinars, and using this space for that, we will reach more people, even people that are not sensibilized with this kind of topics. Our goal is reaching the people who are not sensibilized. This is our goal, but mostly we reach people that are closer to us, and then little by little, like when you talk to people in the ear, like that. Is the way that the things are working. We have some hope, but we have to do it faster. Let's say.
But please take care of yourselves as well. We all forget self-care when we're involved with all this very, very bad stuff.
And also that when we talk with to people that are now facing the effects of the situation of the COVID-19, and they are unemployed and they are facing difficulties. So we are not telling them that they don't have the right to feel like that. Only that they have to focus on other people, or not on the migrants, but facing these things in a different way. So first we have to recognize that they're feeling bad, and why, and it's fair to feel like that, but at the same time work with people to you have to acknowledge them, but at the same time working with them to see that migrants are not the problem. So migrants are facing the same problems that people are facing, because poverty came before migrants came. If not, they are not coming here. So this is kind of things that I think that can work in this case.
Yeah, so it's easy to make them the political scapegoat for any situation, really. So I have one question always regarding the pandemic. if the COVID situation had an impact on your organization, in the sense, in the quantity of fake news or quality, and also at the organizational basis. If something changed, if you adapted in a different way to, and maybe found a different resources, or
I mean, from our side, if I can, I can, on behalf of Disinfaux, we actually don't know how it is to work outside the pandemic as a group, because we were formed within the first lockdown in Greece. At the same time, I think that it gives you, as I said in the beginning, it gives you potential to work better remotely and to actually spend more time in front of your screen and actually go through social media, which means that eventually you will uncover way more material than you were hoping for or expected. On the other hand, it also, and that's a common ground for everyone in Greece, and that includes both researchers and the public and everyone, and citizen journalists and citizens in any form, and in any, let's say, status of citizenship, is not having access to the field. And I think that this is what makes everyone very suspicious, and makes everyone very much afraid. And not only that, but even within the limited amount of access that people have to certain events, now there is an active approach from the side of the Greek authorities, at least for the case of Greece, to actually minimize that. We've seen, and there's an example that I remember, we've seen a video where a woman is filming the police beating up a young guy. We don't know the reason, but definitely violence was unjustified because he was not armed and he didn't resist, as it can be seen on the video. And then when the police asked the woman to stop filming, and she said, but I can film, I have the right to. And the policeman said, no, you don't. The law says you don't. And she asked, what law? And he said, that one, without naming a law, literally said that one. So we see that this is, people have even less information as to how they can react to these situations. The rule of law, if I can use the term, is bended in such a way during the pandemic that it makes it very difficult for anyone on the ground or online, the way we see censorship on social media right now, and specific, let's say, political affiliations in terms of concepts and ideas being banned or deplatformed, quite the opposite ones from the ones that we would expect to. I think that this has a toll very much on our work and on the work of our colleagues and partner organizations and individuals.
This was a discussion we wanted to pass on anyway. Talk about. We wanted to talk with you about all the debunking platforms, but also the self-censorship of big media, like it happened with Trump now and Twitter, and what you think about that. Particularly because also journalistic researches about the actual banning pop up right now, and you kind of see that it is relatively more likely to get banned as a left organization than if you're a hater or a conspiracy theory maniac. So that's, I guess we should enter this, and I see there are already 4 questions in the Q&A box. So maybe take a look and we can take upon them as well. Another thought that I would like to leave with you as a person that has experience working in solidarity with migrants and refugees, there are always 2 kinds of fake news we have to combat, at least the way I'm organized. On the one hand, we have the fake news campaigns that are in many cases politically motivated. But we also have, due to something you point out to Fivos, due to lack of transparency in information, lack of transparency in numbers and so on, we have a lot of misinformation also circulating among refugees. And this is something we can almost not counteract, also because of language barriers. And we saw it particularly just before the pandemic, for example, where there was a situation, again, escalating in the Greek-Turkish borders with people trying to cross. and the European Union sending military, von der Leyen flying over with a helicopter, people being actually shot at the border, unarmed. It was a situation like this where it was also very difficult to react because we had no linguistic access to these people. So perhaps also some ideas with that. And if providing accurate information to refugees and migrants that are hosted in different countries is also part of the work that has to be done because governments don't come up to that. Perhaps Daura, you want to take the floor first?
Well, I wanted to answer also to Fulvia's question. Then I think I have to remember everything you have said. It's fine, it's fine. We have to adapt all our present program because we work on different programs. We first think about the ideas and the group of people we want to reach. So in this case, we have different activities like a roundtable with Muslim women to talk about their experience, how they're facing rejection in the street and these kind of things, how they're facing also fake news. And we have to postpone it until the present. And then we hope that in 2020 we will have the space to do it. But most of the activities have to move from the actual to online to the present to online activities, and it has made everything more difficult. Also, the campaign to share tools to verify information was only online, so we cannot measure really how many people we are reaching, and at least not in the same way that before. So it's more difficult now than before to reach people. But at the same time, we have also the opportunity to use the internet and to do training and webinars like this one. And they are open to everyone and open to discussion, open to dialogue and to a real interaction. And we have talked to people that are living in other islands, living in Spain, living abroad. Many experts that we thought they were far from our yes. So we have the opportunity to do this, facing also the difficulties of the present situation. And if you can remind me the question, please.
I just asked how if you also encountered this fake news spread within the migrant and refugees communities, if you consider this in your work, and yes, I think this was the main point and the main question I wanted to make before. How do you deal with this? You said already, I mean, you organized roundtables with people that are coming themselves. But this is something, as I understand, that is not as easy to organize now under the pandemic conditions, or?
No, it's not easy because, well, when everything started with the lockdown, people were facing difficulties too because many people lost their jobs. They have informal jobs. They don't have real contractors. So migrants here in Tenerife organize themselves to help other migrants and also to help not only migrants, to help all the society that are facing difficulties, economic difficulties. They couldn't buy food and any kind of difficulties. And now, and after that, they started to also to organize some webinars and some spaces to talk and to deal with different themes, to different topics. So it has been an opportunity for them to do so. And also, as we they were linked to Juntas en la misma dirección strategy. Juntas en la misma dirección is it belongs or is promoted by the Department of Employment, Socioeconomic Development and External Action of the island government of the government of Tenerife, and also the University of La Laguna, the local university. So they can use this network, this huge network, this institutional network, to also to reach more people. It is also official. So in this case, it can be helpful. I mean, the fact that we are working online, it's helping people to reach in, to having the space and the voice that they couldn't have before, or we didn't give them before, let's say. And it has been really beautiful to see that all the work that it has been done during 2020, and it has not been planned. Everything was like everyday work. Yes. I don't know if I have answered the question, but I hope so.
Fivo.
I mean, from my side, and I will not really focus on what Disinfaux, like on Disinfo's work on this, but more as an activist in terms of the first lockdown specifically. There was this very weird situation on the first side of the pandemic where, and for the people from Greece that are watching us, there is like this phrase that we say that people sometimes have to like sniff their fingernails to find information. Like this is what was actually going on with migrants on the streets and with asylum seekers. There was this situation where they didn't have information. And I find it very interesting that within a pandemic that is portrayed as a medical, I mean, is a medical issue, the main problem for people on the street, like the very second after the medical thing, was information. It was actually very difficult for volunteers and for solidarity actors to actually go on the street on the first instance, because there was no an approval from the side of the state to do so. But then even if they would go out, people would not understand the context of the pandemic. They would not understand how they should react to things. They just, just because somebody is living on the street, that doesn't mean that they have or they wish to have interactions daily. Some people, they don't. And there were people without information. There were people that were asking us, so what's going on? Like, is there something I should do? Am I in danger for being on the street? The city went on lockdown and people did not have any information. I think we are slowly getting out of that. I think that slowly people are getting back on the streets and are getting back on demonstrations and informing minorities and informing vulnerable people. And I'm really glad to say that despite of these governments and the previous government's actions in Greece, people have still maintained certain social movements and certain social actions of support and solidarity, which are very important also within this present day. Last thing, when it comes to the like our work, I think that we are not really focusing on someone specific. And this, as general as it might sound, there is a reason behind it. I want to be able, and I think that I speak on behalf of the team when I say that, be able to share information and be judged for it and be criticized and be able, like, I'm very happy if somebody comes to our work and say, oh, you did a mistake there. And we would be very happy to discuss this. And I think that this is, again, the very cultural verification that I spoke of before, which especially in light of COVID becomes even more important.
Thank you very much, Fivos. I would like to try to start taking the questions from the Q&A box. There are 4 of them. I guess the first of them we almost answered, but the question concretely is on the strategy that Dara described before, pointing out the universality of human rights and why it is important that they're also accessible to everyone and not only to the local people of a country. And the second question would be if these fake news narratives have influenced the living and working conditions of migrants and non-migrants. Both we've touched upon, but perhaps we can talk a little bit on these two questions a little bit more focused. Fulvia, would you like to take the floor first? Because
yes. So, for instance, a big part of the project of Riace that I spoke of before was giving migrants a working condition. There were specific, let's say, offices, even mechanical ones, for them to dive into and explore, and there was also more manufacturing than anything else, very practical, and there was also a system of monetary system, let's say, to not use euros but rather created within the association itself to help them establish their own autonomy eventually. So regarding fake news and the fake news narrative and work, I believe that there is a big also gendered dimension of fake news, and it certainly influences also the stereotypical way in which migrants are represented, and often we can see that reflected on migrants. For instance, let's say in the case of Lucano, he was accused of having a close relationship with a migrant that was a prostitute, and of kind of selling her to give her in return the nationality, Italian nationality, and to sell her to an old Riace citizen. So I think they are strictly interconnected, and also they just kind of create the whole stereotype of women and male, and like, as I said before, one of the main narrative we find in the fake news and in the media is of having the female in need of care, let's say with child, and instead, and like unable to kind of express herself because she just needs care. And on the other hand, the male, which is just seen as a Brutus that needs to be feared. So both stereotypy, of course, in the end, discredit the person. And so I don't know if Taura wants to add something.
Yes, because also seeing what we have done in the past, I mean, the strategy, Tenerife Antirrumores, we deal with what we call participative communication, that is based on horizontal and participative planning and creation process, where all the participants are active and contribute to create new frames or new narratives of reference to transform their realities. So what we did was what we called in 2016 dialogic laboratories to generate creative and consensual answers to the challenge of reframing in this case, because it was 2016, the refugees crisis into a solidarity response or message, let's say. So these laboratories are based on the construction of proposals following awareness raising and sensibilization patterns or guidelines. So we created a space of dialogue between scientific research, personal experiences, social intervention, these kind of things, everything together. And the final result was the identification of five methodological keys to design anti-racist communicative strategies that we called the 5 R's. When we translated that into English, it's not 5 R's, but anyway. So the first one is redefine. That is changing the focus based normally on the securitization of the securitization of the narrative, based on the idea that migrants are a threat. Also, they are criminals, and also as I think Fulvia explained very well before, the conception of otherness, we versus they, as we are not all the same, but they are different, you know. So the idea of redefining is we show the suffering, but we don't use it as a spectacle. We give keys to understand the context, the causes of and the conflict around the forced migration, and we make visible the active role and capacities of the refugees and the success stories, positive stories of inclusion, welcoming, and of course, showing the positive impact of migrations. There's one, redefine. The second one is reframe. Not only given a counter-argument, but also reframing the problem. Instead of dealing with the cost of solidarity, people always say that welcoming migrants or refugees is very expensive, but really the cost here, we talk about the cost of the indifference. Defending the idea of a society based on human rights for all. Replacing the security approach by the humanitarian approach. And so with that, the security approach dehumanizes us. Third one, rehumanize. We name and give visibility to the people's stories and their capacity of action, and leave the migrants the space to talk by themselves. That is very important. This step is very important because it breaks the radical division between we and they, to show that we share a common ground, and also to demonstrate the diversity and complexity of the people's identities. We tried always to reduce people to homogeneous kind of people, and they are all the same. That is not people are people. We are all different. It is the same in every culture and in every context. The fourth one is dealing with responsibility, with being accountable, taking responsibility. So we underlined the co-responsibility of the facts, analyzing with criticism the role of Occident in the humanitarian crisis, avoiding blaming the victims, giving keys to intervene in the everyday context, and creating channels for people to participate. In this case, we can participate in our activities, but there are other channels to participate. And we train people as agents of solidarity. We train people as agents of solidary communication, showing that everyone can contribute in their local context. And the fifth one, the last one, it's something that I already said, is recognize. We try not to stigmatize the negative attitudes, but we legitimize the fear and the suffering of part of the society that are facing nowadays. It was in 2016, and we can see the parallelism now with the COVID-19 situation. So we acknowledge the needs behind their feelings to talk to them. So that's the 5 steps that we think that are very useful to deal with this situation.
Can I ask you about the methodology you use in the laboratories? You do.
Ah, okay. I already said that it was a dialogic laboratories.
Yes, like the specific methodology.
Yes.
That you use.
And in this case, well, I was part of, in 2016, I was part of training for anti-rumors agents. So we shared this knowledge with people that were doing the training, and also try to create a campaign based on these 5 steps. But mainly when we started doing with that, the basis is dialogue, talking to people.
Okay, so like participative of like
yes,
the
open.
broader...
Yes, open and participative. Everyone can join us.
And Phyllis, would you like to add also something?
Yeah, from our side, I think in terms of methodologies and how do we would utilize certain methods to do our work, I think that I would go one step further and say that there is an issue that even though we can create this culture of verification, this is not always relevant to all people, even though it should be accessible by all people at all times, but it's not. And I will give you the example of the new camp in Lesbos. So there is allegations that the camp is contaminated by lead. The recent research, even by the Greek authorities, shows that there are indeed at least concerning levels of lead contamination on the site, if not, quite high. And this is not translated even by watchdogs or by relevant actors or by journalists. This is not translated to the languages that the people that are imprisoned in the camp speak. And I think that this is one extra step that we need to consider sometimes, especially for us, since we are not yet organizing seminars on the field. But on the other hand, it should be a main focus also for outlets. We cannot speak of inclusion without really looking on how we can make information on all levels, including journalism, including access to information available to people like that. Either whether it is in written form, whether it is in audio, we see an ever-growing culture of inclusion and accessibility on certain sides of the political spectrum or on certain sides in society, but we do not really see that when it comes to asylum seekers and displaced populations. And I think that this is one thing that I feel the need to highlight. The other thing when it comes to methodology and to whom we address, and also to touch upon the other question on the chat about credible sources and how can you find credible sources, I think that this is the bet we have to win here. We are not addressing our work at anyone specifically. We want to make it open for as many people, and if possible, make it in layers. So if you want to spend 5 minutes with it, you can get the gist of what it says. If you want to spend 10 days with it, you can still find more stuff to investigate that we haven't investigated, not because we don't think it's important, but because you can never exhaust and put a truth claim. And the last thing, also in regards to the working conditions of migrants and non-migrants, which I would call displaced populations and local, one would say, populations, is that fake news and misinformation affect their everyday life, and also the attempt to debunk fake news affect their daily lives. And this is something we have to be very aware of. Just to attack and create more stir up more violence even on a verbal way, that can also have impact. To go out and put truth claims and truth statements coming, let's say, from the authority of truth is also a very dangerous method that should also be approached and tread very carefully. because we wish to make information and to verify information with the local community that is willing to do this process, not necessarily against it. It's one thing to combat far right and hate speech online and violence on the streets, and it's a different thing to try and verify information.
Thank you. I would like to go back on the topic of censorship versus freedom of speech. So beforehand, I introduced this topic speaking about legal solution to disinformation, even though really I think it regards all kind of counter fake news strategies, because in the end there is always how do you do it? How do you counter? What is your strategy, and how do you block the fake news? And so in particular, well, regarding the legal one I was speaking before, there is an example, which is that in France in 2017, I think, around 2017, when Macron was elected, he pushed a bill to stop posting fake news during election periods on social media and the internet, which became very controversial because, of course, and criticized because was perceived as restriction of freedom of speech and information. But also, as Katerina said before, these regards the recent episodes of social media bans from Twitter, Facebook. Also, very recently, Trump was banned even for YouTube and everything. So I would like to speak with you about this dilemma, kind of like, how do you really fact check, and also in the end, who fact check the fact checkers?
I mean, for example, I think we could start with you, Fivos. Yes, you have also the Greek hoaxes. Perhaps it will be interesting for our audience, this fact checker dilemma as well.
So touching upon the two main platforms that people use in Greece, actually two of the three main platforms, and that would be Facebook and Twitter, we see quite an interesting set of examples here. So when it comes on Twitter, there is a very famous hashtag in Greece, which is called anti-report, which has been used by many collectives and organizations to report on struggles, on everyday life, on demonstrations, on anti-fascist action and anti-fascist narratives. And we saw recently that some of the people that were posting, some of the collectives that were posting on this hashtag were shadow banned. And for those of you that are not yet aware with what shadow ban is, that means that Twitter does not suspend your account, but actually hides it from search results. On the other hand, we see a very big amount of trolls and bots attacking the hashtag using irrelevant information, or making fun of the people that actually post, which is actually against the regulations of Twitter. Interestingly enough, back I think almost a year ago, when the QAnon conspiracy theory was getting like mass attention, there was a huge amount of K-pop fans that stormed the QAnon hashtags. So disruption of a hashtag creates, in this case, a double standard. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that I'm very happy that K-pop fans, ruined the day for QAnon fans in the US. But on the other hand, I would really prefer trolls and bots not to be involved in spamming the anti-report, especially on the middle of a demo. So if you ask me, and that's my personal opinion, I'm not for banning people interacting with a hashtag. If you can always block someone, if they don't use, obviously, hate speech, that's a different thing. Now, when it comes to the fact checkers in Greece, we have Hellenic Hoaxes. This is the official fact checker. They have done some mistakes from time to time. I don't know enough about them, and to be honest, I don't think that anyone really knows enough about them, apart from speculation and an allegation that has been circulating for some years that they are former military that are consisting of the team. On the other hand, though, we see fact-checking, we see Hellenic hoaxes putting the claim that something is false under many articles, yet I know profiles on Facebook that we regularly monitor that are full of these articles, and they don't seem to bat an eye that there is a claim underneath. And the same would go for like President Trump tweets. Twitter would flag it as false information, and yet still people would retweet it. And it became a fuzz only when Twitter actually suspended the account. I think that that's something that will develop in very interesting ways or very dangerous ways in the future. I don't think that there is anyone that can put a truth or like a truth claim and maintain this absolute authority of being the fact checker. And I think that especially when fact checkers are interacting with the government or any authority, this is where it actually becomes tricky, and it has the potential to actually stir specific discussions and to create, and that's I think is the most dangerous side, to actually influence policy. The Greek police, for example, recently acted or wishes to act as a fact checker by saying that because of the spread of fake news from demonstrations, hinting also to the fact that police brutality is actually fake news in many cases, like there is no police brutality in Greece. That's what they say to the public. So for this reason, they will get or they will invite journalists in a protected and safe space in demonstration to report from there. So be able to be fed specific information maybe. So again, fact checking comes in all kinds and forms, and I think that it's important for us to keep an eye out and also do our own verification regardless of what Hellenic hoaxes or any other fact checker out there would say.
Thank you very much, Fivos. Daura,
I don't have much to say in this answering this question. Only that we have fact checkers in Spain too, like maldita.es. Also, the Spanish TV has a verification service, and also another, I think it's F News, also have a verification service. So in many cases, as Fib already said, we can use their information. I actually use it for the fake news that are affecting the Canary Islands and the migrants in the Canary Islands. But we also have to check the fact checkers, because they are people, and they can also, even if they verify with the institutions and the government and everything, there's still some things that they are not completely true, but maybe some data is not completely true. But most of the time we have seen that almost everything has been checked.
Thank you, Daura. And Fulvia, maybe also on this topic, but also extended it to the European Union, because there is a question as well in the Q&A. You talked also in your presentation about the Stratcom and how the European Union is dealing with this. So perhaps you could take the floor.
Yes, so I spoke already briefly in the presentation about the fact that the European Union has different initiatives starting from 2015 onwards. They've been criticized, as I said. They're not perfect, they're a bit unbalanced and probably not enough for the issue at hand. Recently, the strategic committee I spoke before, including there is a new kind of brand for the EU and disinformation called the EU versus Disinfaux. Being part of this brand, they led the EU effort to counteract COVID-19 related disinformation. So this campaign became a cross-institutional policy priority, which included intervention from the EAS and the European Agency for law enforcement cooperation, so Europol, and also political leadership across the EU and member states. And this is not the first time that the European made countering disinformation, but still it's the first time that it kind of made it one of the principal objective of the policy. So in the past, must be said, the EU has been focusing mostly on the Balkans, on the Eastern Balkans, so Ukraine, and also the chemical weapons attack in Salisbury and Russia. But still, let's say, yeah, there are continuing efforts, and they're also continuously looking for new people to join the team, and so it's developing. It's in course.
It's still making me politically uncomfortable that this task is in the same agency that is governing Frontex.
Yes, in fact it is. I mean, the policy of wall I was speaking before, it's all European. So, and there are many walls, physical, also in the Balkans, and then even technological with the fingerprinting and also maritime. Yes, but still. Some effort is there. But
you mentioned technology. I see we are actually speaking almost 2 hours. The time passed very, very fast. There is still one question we haven't answered, but I guess it would be easy to do so. And there's one question I would like to ask. So I'll try both. Take your notes. The last question from the Q&A box is whether or not there is technology that you use in your work and could be useful in tracking disinformation and debunking faster. Perhaps you have some tips. And apart from that, I would like to ask you if you see this the fight for the right to be informed in a truthful way. If this is something we could and should campaign internationally, because at least in my thought, it is obvious that there's too many similarities in this local misinformation campaigns for them to be randomly similar, you know. And I guess you have frequently the situation of small local solidarious open-minded communities that want to counteract, but their opponent is internationally connected and super powerful. So how could we transnationally react as well? And would it be worth it, for example, to have another webinar like that and discuss this in the coming future? And I guess, Vivos, I would give the floor to you.
So in regards to the first question, I think that one very useful tool, especially for groups and organizations and collectives such as ours to work with this, is keeping track of it. I think that this is a very useful tool that everyone can do. I mean, if you're really interested in combating misinformation or be super informed as much as you can, and again, you can never be fully informed, right? Like, especially in an era that we are bombarded by information on every stage of our daily lives, from the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep. It's very difficult to be fully informed, but it's very interesting, and so that's something that we usually do, is to actually keep track of these narratives if you find them, and put a note there. Like when you see, for example, as I said before, anti-vaxxing, you can go back into the 90s and you can even find some people mentioning it, and then all the way to 2010, where there was like a bigger amount of people and groups of people on social media speaking about anti-vaxxing, and now it's back again today. If you go back to group posts from 2010, you will still see people speaking about almost the same things we're talking today, changing only the relevant points that would make these theories or these fake news or disinformation connected to today's world. I think that technology is something that can be very useful in keeping track of this. Services like the Web Archive are amazing in order to also find the traces. Reverse image search is also something very powerful as a tool. On the other hand, we have to be aware that technology is something that we do not control in terms of verification that leads to the extent of surveillance has the potential to damage the very people that seek to do verification. And that's something that we have to be very aware of. The other thing, and I think the last thing on that question, is databases. You have access as a citizen, especially if you are from the European Union and let's say countries that have a Freedom of Information Acts. And I'm sorry, I'm not aware. I'm aware that this actually stands within the EU and it also stands in the US. So basically, you are able as a citizen to request information from your state. Do that. You are allowed as a citizen to call out journalists and researchers and say, like, where did you find this information? Don't try to combat what they say. Try to see the evidence and the proof that they would bring along, and then try to verify it or not. And I think that this is very important. I think that calling for information is a transnational strategy, is something that we can always do. And obviously, it cannot affect on the small level the things like, maybe we cannot influence the opinion of a neighborhood or a group of people, but it can actually influence policy, and that maybe can also lead to further verification culture being created.
Thank you very much. Laura, yes.
Well, in the campaign that I already shared before about verification, sharing verification tools and different advices, we actually share some clues, some hints there. First of all is the headings. We say that we should not rely only on the headings. Sometimes they are trying to be they are trying to call for attention, and as you know, there's also this phenomenon that's called clickbait, and not all the information is in the headings. So you have to go to the news, not only the heading. What else? The images and the videos. It's also important to do the Fibo said the reverse search. In the case of images, is very easy to do it. You can take one picture and use it to go to the internet and do the reverse search. And also the people who set the information. In some media, or even if sometimes we don't know who did the information, sometimes it's hidden, or in the audios that we share by WhatsApp, there are people who say, I work for this organization, I work here, but they don't share their identity. So please don't rely on this kind of information if they don't have the full information, and do your own research. And if you doubt, don't share it, please. The place, in videos or images, you can check also where the things happen, and you can look for the context in the buildings that are around, and also the weather. How was the weather that day? You can research everything on the internet. So if you want to check, you have the tools to check it. And also, we try to say that you should rely on official sources. And if you don't rely on official sources, then there's also other sources that can be reliable, but rely on the experts, rely on the administration data, and of course, as Fibo said, the statistics and all the information that it's already on your local government has this information. The Spanish information, for instance, has also the website where you can look for statistics and numbers, real figures. And also in the European Union, they have this information. And try not to be biased by your own ideas, and try to always go beyond your ideas, because mostly we try to only rely on the things that we agree on, and we don't look for more information. Mm-hmm. It's more or less the things that Phoebe already said, but there are tools that we really can use.
Thank you very much, Laura, also for the important sum up now. Fulvia, any thoughts?
On the methodologies, well, I'm not, I don't work for a fact-checking organization, but I did some research on that. I think, well, for a kind of basic layer, you can do yourself, like you're not helpless in searching for fake news. Also, there are sites that have been approved, and I mean, there are some bases you can trust, but there are some instances in which I think really you need to find a way. Like, I know, for example, in Spain, there are different organizations that you can contact with a news that you want to check, and they will do it. So I think in some occasion there is the need for an expert, and it's an actual job, and you need actual technologies to be able to verify the news that they're not accessible to the everyday person that doesn't work in the sector. I think it's a very interesting area, and it's an actual job with people with engineering degrees. Okay, I think Kat's video, it's lagging a bit. No, now you're here.
Yes,
okay, sorry.
I don't know if I think I'm stuck. No, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, you are frozen in my screen. So, okay,
we can
you're
hear
here
you.
again.
Yes.
You're here again. It's okay. Now we have passed the 2 hours. I am sure we could talk another 2, but finally we have to come to an ending. Also, a couple of people from the audience have left us already. It's Monday and it's 8:30 here in the evening. So it would be time to say goodbye, and I would like to warmly thank you for taking the time today. And I would like to ask if you have some final words you want to share. And I hope we meet again and we get to do stuff together.
I would like to say thanks to Kat and to Transform Europe and to Sinistra XXI. It was a great occasion to meet, and also a very, very interesting topic, which I've been following for a couple of years now. And it's very fascinating and ever developing. So thank you all.
From our side as well, I'd like to thank you, Kat, and thanks everyone for participating or watching this. And I think that unfortunately it's not a subject that will go out of fashion anytime soon. So we will be here, we will be talking about it, and yeah, from our side, thanks again.
Yes, I would like to thank Fulvia for the invitation, to thank Transform Europe for the invitation, to have this opportunity to share our work, and also the participants to be there and to ask questions and to make them questions, because that's the beginning of reversing the fake news, going beyond and answer the questions. And I really appreciate this space, and I hope we can have more opportunities in the future.
Thank you very much, everyone, again. We have been recording this session. We will be uploading it in the next couple of days in the Transform YouTube channel. And of course, you're welcome to share it. And if you want to have the video for your organization, please send me an email. I will send it to you as well. Talk to you soon. Have a nice evening.
Thank
Have a
you
nice
all.
evening.
Bye. Have a nice
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.